And even interviews, there's TikToks out there that are showing people using AI during the interview to respond to questions.
And we have, this really incredible competitive advantage. Why are they still able to be much, much bigger than us? And I think it comes back to the product.
Do you use AI for game design nowadays? Because we see it all over the place in terms of creatives.
I often say that someone who has the right mindset in terms of that is going to get much further than someone just has a strong skill set.
Basically, I can imagine you've reached the ceiling. Like, can you still grow with that?
Welcome to Let's Talk Ads. We're here to push your growth, marketing tips, fun and chats. Tune in, let's rock the show.
Hello, this is Andre from Let's Talk Ads. Welcome to my podcast. Today we are talking about product a lot, and with me, I'm actually really excited, a little bit nervous almost, a superstar from the industry, Luis De La Cámara. He's VP Global Marketing at Rovio and part of the leadership team, obviously, and we will talk a lot about product today. Luis, welcome to the stage. How are you doing? Where are you?
Hey, thanks, Andre. So I'm actually based in Madrid in Spain, but work remotely. For Rovio, I have teams across multiple locations, so do travel quite often, especially to Helsinki, where the Rovio headquarters is. That's kind of the key place I go. But yeah, we have folks in as well in Sweden, in Barcelona, and Izmir, Turkey, Copenhagen, and so forth. So quite a global presence of the team. But yeah, I'm here in Spain and really excited to talk to you. I've had great experiences with Rowboat and other interactions you and I have had over the past couple of years. So yeah, really excited to do this with you.
Yeah, to the listeners, Louis and I know each other already from some other occasions. You mentioned the Rowboat. For those who don't know, that's actually an event that I'm hosting in the name of Admiral Media, where I'm inviting clients and potential clients, obviously, to sail with me on a boat. Very often Barcelona, we did it in Marbella and some other places.
Like Berlin as well, right? You did one?
Yeah, exactly. Berlin as well. So yeah, it's very casual networking event, I would call it, usually with a shirts off situation on the boat. So really casual. Louis, happy to have you on board and share some insights. We wanted to talk about why product beats promotion. I think that's a very interesting topic because most of the shows I was talking about how do you run Facebook ads and how should you optimize SK ad network whatsoever. But how is your take? I look at Angry Birds and some other titles in the Sega universe. The product is obviously key. Otherwise, you wouldn't have cracked it from the very first start with Angry Birds, right? How do you see this as a VP Global Marketing? How is your involvement in product? What role does it play in your universe?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing I'll say is just to clarify, our biggest marketing spend is in user acquisition, and this is the reality across the mobile games industry that almost in every case, UA is where the biggest sort of marketing dollars go to. But, what I talk to many folks about is that at the end of the day, we are in a very product-led industry. And so I think this is the way that I think about my time, my effort, my team, and what they should be thinking about. While, of course, spending a lot of time on UA and now influencer marketing and 360 marketing, et cetera. These are all really key to key growth levers. But at the end of the day, it's really fundamental that we understand that first and foremost, we are in a product-led industry. When I can go a little bit deeper in that so that people kind of understand what I mean by that is I like to use the best way to understand something is comparing it to something else, right? And so I often compare mobile gaming versus fashion retail. Brands like, let's say, Nike as an example, or Adidas, right? They're more brand led and marketing led industries, and they're the ethos, the brand, the equity that they've built with the brand, the trust, the lore, the history of the brand is kind of what really sort of sets them apart from their competitors, right? If someone was going to go and buy Nike or buy Adidas, what they're buying mainly is that long history of of lore and story around the brand and people's knowledge of the brand, the awareness of the brand, and basically the emotional connection that people have with that, with those brands, right? And then the product line often in those types of industries, the product line really is to reinforce the brand story and the emotional connection people have with that brand, right? There's a reason why you pay a premium on Nike shoes, for example, and it's not just purely on the quality, right? You can probably get just as good quality sneakers that are unbranded and would cost you much less, but in the end of the day, what you're paying is for the Nike logo and everything, the emotional connection and general sort of.
And it's the same with Angry Birds. And do you see this in
Yeah,
the same
so
way?
this is the thing that's interesting, right? Is that mobile gaming is much more product led, right? Which I mean by that is that it, like, at the end of the day, you have to have a really solid product. And the brand, then, that if you have a strong brand, it will enhance your ability to grow your game. But at the end of the day, the fundamentals of growth start with having a very, very solid product, a game that retains extremely well, that engages players super well, that able to convert non-spenders into spenders, and that has a really strong lifetime value. And then that's really what's going to set you apart. Now, Rovio has a unique selling point, which is a very, very well-known brand. Angry Birds, the brand, is up there with Nike and Coca-Cola in terms of awareness across the world, actually. From China to the Middle East and definitely the United States and Europe, we have an incredible brand awareness, which is, I think there's nothing comparable. Maybe, probably the next one similar is maybe Candy Crush, and still Angry Birds is still significantly well known. But just being known doesn't mean that you can outgrow your competitors, right? You still need a very, very solid product, and people need to care about your brand, right? Not just know about your brand, but also care about your brand. So that's something that we think about a lot at Rovio, is like, how do we have the strongest products possible, and then how do we strengthen the brand, not just purely on the awareness side, because that job has sort of been done by our predecessors. Now it's like, how do we have people fall in love with our brand, especially a brand that is now kind of more than 15 years old. So that's I think that's generally the main thing. And then how do I spend my time? So of course I'm looking at all our different growth levers and marketing channels, but at the same time I'm spending a lot of time on product. And when I say spending time on product, it starts with understanding our players and really understand our players, like who they are, why they play our game, what makes our game special to them, why do they choose our game over others, what frustrates them about our current product, and so where can we actually improve, and then how do we build working with the game team and the GMs and the game leads on how do we build a robust roadmap that is both product and marketing focused.
So this kind of a product-driven marketing, let's say, is that with such a famous, extremely well-established brand, is that still a growth function, or is it rather a retention function from your perspective when you do marketing? Because when I look at the average app or the average game, they start from some relatively low numbers and they want to scale it to from $10,000 a month spent to $100,000, and this is a massive growth function for them, 10x, right? How is that at Angry Birds? I mean, I can imagine you've reached the ceiling. Like, can you still grow with that? Is it still, when you do marketing for Angry Birds, is that still a growth function?
I think to be honest, people probably look at Rovio and be like, wow, that's a massive company, super successful. We actually see ourselves still quite small versus, again, I'm using Candy Crush as an example, or Royal Match, who's more of a newcomer, Monopoly Go, etc. Like there are games out there that are significantly larger than us, and so we still feel like we still have a huge mountain to climb, and we feel that there's an opportunity to climb that mountain. So just, again, this coming back to this thing, just because we have this unique selling point of a brand that's very, very well known, doesn't necessarily mean that we can, as a business, or that we are as a business today at the same level as some of these others. And why are they, if we have a stronger brand and we have, this really incredible competitive advantage, why are they still able to be much, much bigger than us? And I think, and it comes back to product, right? Like, we have made many Angry Birds games over the years, and only 3 of them today really truly matter to our business. Angry Birds 2, Angry Birds Dream Blast, Angry Birds Friends. And all of those are still, are still kind of in the lower league compared to Monopoly Go or Royal Match or Candy
Okay.
Crush,
As
etc.
you mean in terms of revenues, or is it in
Yeah, in
number
terms
of?
of revenue, in terms of even DAU and things like
Oh,
that, right?
okay.
And I think a lot of it is, again, like a really strong product. There's 2 things that happen with a strong product, and why a stronger product, and what I mean is stronger product, I mean retains better, is able to have a higher lifetime value, basically. So it converts well and has really deep monetization, is able to still keep a wide enough funnel to attract very broad audiences, and has ultimately a really strong lifetime value. And why that matters is for 2 reasons. One, if you have a really great product, your best marketing channel are your players, right? Your consumers. If look at Spotify. Why does Spotify grow? Did they do a bunch of marketing and that's how they grew? Yes, of course they did a bunch of marketing, but they really grew just because the product was just amazing. And friends would talk to other friends and say, like, I'm listening, look, like, in a world where they were changing sort of the music industry, it was word of mouth that really got them, their first probably, $1 billion, right? And so, really strong product means that you have consumers, players, that will go and help you drive your own growth. And then secondly, if you have really strong lifetime value, coming back to user acquisition, at the end of the day, most of UA today is an auction, and it is a bit of a winner takes all market, especially post ATT, where it's really about whoever can bid the highest can get their ads in front of the highest quality users, and normally convert those into players, and then if they're able to retain those players, that's a growth loop that they are able to kind of keep pushing. And if they're big enough and they have enough financing, they can then just keep doing that at scale, and then ultimately that creates this positive flywheel that really allows them to grow and get to the top of the market. And we are a bit going more into a winners take all market, at least in the mobile gaming space.
That's a good take, actually. Like, considering the auction mechanics, how do you win an auction, right? So it's high click-through rates, it's good conversion rates, whatever leads to something. And this can be driven only by extremely massive brand awareness, right? So someone really likes the ads from that particular brand and clicks on it and buys it or whatever. Or you win the auction by just outbidding your competitors, right? So that's key. And how can you do that with a really high LTV usually, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, one of the things that what we noticed is that Rovio has been able to, with our Angry Birds games, remain relatively competitive in the auctions. Not so much on the LTV side. I think we have decent LTV, but we definitely don't have industry leading LTV at the moment. And so our ability to really kind of have a certain level of scale has a lot been due with what you're saying, like getting better IPMs, installs per 1,000 impressions, and that's like great click-through rate, and good conversion rate, and a lot of it has to do with the brand recognition, and we've even seen this, right? We've done tests with especially early game development where we have sort of a vanilla version of the game versus a Angry Birds version of the game, and we often see just lower CPI on the Angry Birds versions of the games. So again, it is a really great competitive advantage. But for us to really reach the scale of a Monopoly Go, or a Royal Match, we need to continue to invest in building the best products possible and having the strongest LTV that will allow us to kind of close the gap on CAC versus LTV for the highest quality users.
Mm-hmm. You're in Rovio now like 3 years or something, right?
Just finishing 4 years.
Or 4 years already, even.
Yeah.
You probably have seen a couple of changes in marketing of this particular brand and their products. How did your team structure evolve over time? Did that change because suddenly new channels appeared? Maybe you have had strategy shifts from bringing out a movie to going back to maybe more Facebook ads, whatsoever, right? How did the team evolve over time, and how does it look at the moment?
Yeah, so like when I joined, we had about between 50 and 60 people across marketing, and they all reported into me from like a pyramid structure, right? Not obviously all directly, but there were layers, of course. But ultimately it was a pyramid structure where everything ended up kind of lining up to me as the kind of key manager. And we already made a bit of a shift. Even my predecessor had already made a bit of a shift by semi-embedding user acquisition and product marketing and community management in the game teams, but still the line management, everything was still centralized up to the marketing function. What I've done over the last couple of years is really kind of leaned much more heavily into that more distributed organization. So we actually now have on our key games, Angry Birds 2 and Angry Birds Dream Blast, we have marketing directors. And those marketing directors don't line manage into me. They actually line manage into the GM of the game or the studio. Kind of we have like studios that are games that are studios, basically. You can think of them that way. So we made a conscious decision to do that, right? And so that means that user acquisition, product marketing, community, etc., they will line manage into those marketing directors when it's those when those are those crafts sort of dedicated to the games. And that has and the reason for that is sort of twofold. One is we have this ethos where like the closer you are to the game and to the product, again being a product-led industry, the more impact you can have. So really having those teams, sit with the rest of the game teams and being really a function within the game organization is super important. And then also it's important for the game leads and the GMs of those games and studios to understand that growth and marketing is not a service that is provided centrally, but actually part of their own responsibility. That for them to be able to manage a P&L and for them to be able to really hit their goals, they need to they can't do that without having ownership and accountability over how growth and marketing work. So that's what happens there. Now, that being said, I still have a significant team under me in central, and then ultimately those two marketing directors dotted line into me, and I'm still working very closely on a daily, weekly basis with those marketing directors to make sure that that I can help them with my expertise, my experience, with my sort of vision for things. Really coach them, be a sparring partner for them, and make sure that that their plans are solid. And then in parallel, I'm working with the DMs and heads of studios and game leads on the long-term strategy and vision for their games, because I believe that marketing has to be a big a big pillar of that strategy. And then I also have under me in central some really sort of senior talented people that can have that portfolio view and can actually go project to project and support where things are most needed. Because we don't only have live games, we also have like new games and development, et cetera, which also, marketing is involved from almost day zero when it comes to new games as well.
This because of the structure and how you described it a little bit, I just had a question on my mind. Like, because you have a very product-driven marketing, apparently, which is supported by this way of structuring the team, apparently. Does anything from marketing feed back into product in terms of, for example, you're maybe testing an ad that displays a very different feature or function or gameplay? Does that feed back into product and vice versa?
Yeah, 100%. So we get a lot of learnings from the creative that we test, right? The cool thing about marketing creative is you can be more experimental. You can try things out that might not fully exist in the game. Now, of course, some players complain because they feel like that's being fake or whatever. But it actually often is a great source of insight for what players are interested in. And so that leads to conversations often with game teams about, hey, like if we're seeing so from Royal Matches, going into a concrete example, if people have seen Royal Match ads, Royal Match Dream Games came up with this concept of, save the king, where, there's these like physics moments of peril, and, you're doing matches to save the king, etc. We've, similar to how things happen in the UA space, you see certain trending ad creatives, and you try them on your game. Sometimes they work, sometimes though. That save the king concept has worked quite well for us in some areas. And so what we see time and time again is like, how do we take that concept and then feed that into some level design or into certain game experiences? The other side of this, I'd say, is that like we spend a lot of time, and I'm a huge believer of user research and insight into our customers. And that actually today is under marketing, even though they serve product as well. And so, just like we are very data driven by looking at dashboards and looking at KPIs, we also want to be very insight driven and make sure that we truly understand our customers, our players, and what makes them tick, like what motivates them, why do they play games, what are they looking for, what's their long-term goals when it comes to playing and entertainment, and then what's their consumer habits, etc., which also will feed into our marketing strategies beyond just the pure product side of things.
Interesting. Do you for level and game design, do you actually jumping topics here?
Yeah.
Do you use AI for game design nowadays? Because we see it all over the place in terms of creatives, but in terms of game design, level design, do you use AI in some way?
I'm just trying to think what I can talk to about this type of stuff. So we definitely, like, on the marketing creative side, AI is hugely important to us in terms of finding new ways to lower the cost of production, to speed up production, and to just try out new things that were maybe too expensive, like live action videos and things like that. In terms of product itself, we've had machine learning models for a long time in the game. So whether that's difficulty balancing, really making sure that every user has a right level of difficulty for their skills and for their desire. Now, how you tweak that and balance that is a bit of the secret sauce for every studio and every game team. But that's obviously been a key aspect we've had for a while, like churn prediction models, spender prediction models, which we've used as well. Again, very ML driven. Now that most of that AI is kind of pre-LLM, right? So it's something more, machine learning models that don't necessarily require LLMs to do that. Where we do use, if one talks about AI and thinks about LLM specifically, and generative AI, there we've used it more now for like insight analysis, data analysis, discussing now the future of like, is there a way that we can have more story in the games, and be able to do that more efficiently at a with localized languages and everything. Like that's still early days, but I think there's a lot more in terms of content that can be done. In terms of actual building levels, etc., I could probably need to speak to kind of our head of design to talk more about what we do there.
Oh, thanks for sharing. It was just curious, a question that just popped up.
Fine.
Jumping a little bit back to the Teams topic, but staying on the AI context. When you have your company structured in the way you did with a very product-driven orientation, let's say, how does it influence your recruiting? And in context of AI, we see that a lot of CVs are now kind of AI generated, very much optimized on keyword terms and stuff. How do you, and even interviews, there's TikToks out there that are showing people using AI during the interview to respond to questions. How do you tackle that, or how do you use AI in that process?
Yeah. So in terms of just recruiting, etc., we have different processes depending on different types of marketing needs, and it's the way you hire video editor is going to be obviously somewhat different, how you hire a UA manager, etc. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we want folks that are experts in their craft, experts in their function, and can go quite deep, but then have the mindset to be somewhat T-shaped, so that they have the ability to understand other crafts, that they can work cross-functionally, and not be sort of in their own little silo. I've spent a lot of time trying to break down silos. It's not an easy thing to do across marketing functions, but we want folks that can be very sort of multi-talented. And I'll give you a very concrete example about that. Like what we've seen, for example, from our team in Izmir in Turkey, we have their marketing creative folks who are very multidisciplined, right? So they might be, good at editing video or building video creative, but they also, know how to use Unity so that they can build certain scenarios or whatever for their video. They also understand user acquisition performance to a certain level, so they can actually themselves be looking at how is this creative performing? What is this telling me? What are some of the other trends that are happening by our competitors or even non-competitors from other industries, or what's happening on social media, and be staying in touch with social media and then feeding that into our creative process, and then being able to execute that on those learnings as a team, being able to take those learnings and then sort of in a very quick fashion build creative and output creative, and then having a much higher hit rate for hero creative. So that's like an example of how we look for folks that are kind of multi-talented or multifaceted, even if they're very experts in their craft. I think another thing that I personally always want to look for are people that are really sort of can-do attitude, that that no obstacle is too large for them, that they get excited about challenges. And so I often say that someone who has the right mindset in terms of that is going to get much further than someone just has a strong skill set. I think skills can be learned. I think attitude is sort of almost innate sometimes, and it also comes with the passion they have for what they're doing. So trying to find ways to do that. Now, answering your question about AI, in terms of how people might be cheating a system, et cetera, I think at the end of the day, when you're going through a hiring process, ultimately you want to spend time talking to people, and not only them asking them questions like, how do you do this or how do you do that, but it's also kind of get a sense of their mental model, get a sense of how they think about things, how they deal with certain situations. I think that is a way to, and just being able to see like, what's the connection you have with them? Are you going to, do you see that they're going to have the energy that you want to work with on a daily basis? And then,
be very difficult to find out because they are in an interview situation, right? So they are always a little bit totally over the top or toned down, right? Because of being nervous and it was a difficult challenge, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's where we we've talked a lot more recently about really kind of thinking about probation periods more and taking them more seriously. Like I think in the United States it doesn't really matter, right? In the United States you can come and go in a company pretty much at will, and the company can hire and fire at will as well. And so in the US it's maybe a little bit less important, right? Because if someone's not working out, you basically ask them to leave. Where in many European countries where we're mostly located, you have to, at some stage, you pretty much commit to someone, right? Like it's really hard to part ways with someone, especially in the Nordics, but not only in the Nordics, right? In other Western European countries as well. And so the probation period becomes essential. And we look at, Supercell is a great example of a company that really takes probation periods super seriously. And that's something that we want to learn more of, and how do we actually implement certain processes in our onboarding to make sure that, that we almost you almost consider from a mindset perspective that you're almost extending the recruitment process during that probation period, right? And making sure that you have those check-ins to say, is this person actually going to fit with our culture? Are they going to be able to deliver what we need? And do they work well with the rest of the team? And making those hard decisions at certain points within that, but also being able to take care of someone if they've made a change and they've come to a new country or whatever. Like if they're not working out, also not just leave them hanging either, right? So
yeah, especially when you move locations, that it can be tough decision as a manager as well, right? So would you say during the probation period, having an almost excessive exchange in one-on-one calls helps you to make a decision, or are there other things that I should do as a manager when I'm hiring within Europe and fall into this probation period situation?
Yeah, so I think it's who are the hiring managers, right? It's not normally me who's that involved. It's normally folks within my teams or or in the distributed teams that are the ones that are really kind of in charge of this. But I think first and foremost, it's changing the mindset of the individuals in the culture of the company, right? Like I think historically most people at Rovio sort of felt that once someone was hired, once someone went through the onboarding, they were kind of, a Rovian and kind of getting them to realize that, we really should only consider someone truly a Rovian once they've passed their probation period. And that and it's mutual, by the way, right? Like we've also seen where, someone's like, hey, you know what, like there's an opportunity elsewhere that's more interesting. And so, maybe 2 months in, they decide to leave themselves and they go somewhere else. But that's also a good sign because it means that they their heart wasn't really in it and they didn't really want to be here. So like, hey, this is what so the first thing is just changing people's mindset so that they understand that it is okay to not really fully, like, even though we want to be super welcoming and we bring, we really kind of make sure that people feel at home from day zero. We still need to make it clear that like there's still a period in which it is called a probation period, and we're still making sure that they're the right fit and that they have the right attitude, the right mindset, and that they're able to deliver with what we've hired them for. And then it's also like for the hiring managers as well. Like what I said is about not leaving people in the in a bad situation, which means that from a leadership level, we need to make sure that we have the right infrastructure in place and the right policies to make sure that if someone's not passing probation, we're not going to just really leave them in a bad personal situation, because that influences how the hiring manager can think about the situation as well, right? Because we have really great people at Rovio who have a really big heart, and sometimes someone will be like, well, maybe they're not perfect, but they just moved to a new country and it's tough on them, and maybe if we just give them a couple more months, they're going to do better, etc. And like that can be a dangerous loop, because you might end up, because oftentimes just a year later or 6 months later, you're like, I maybe should have made this person obviously not working out, I should have made a decision earlier, but now it's past probation and now it becomes a much more expensive and complicated situation. So yeah, making sure that we also help our own hiring managers to know that that they can make a tough call, and it's perfectly normal, and that there will be some policy there that will be able to support those individuals that don't make it through probation.
Yeah, understand. When you think about user acquisition, let's jump into the actual let's talk ads. Do you think there are some big, let's say, misconceptions or mistakes UA managers are doing nowadays in mobile marketing specifically? Do you see people are doing big mistakes in terms of how they set up everything, or how they think about creatives, or how they are, again, structuring teams around that? Do you see any of that?
That's a good one. I don't know there's like a perfect way to manage things. And again, I'm not super in the weeds in the day-to-day of the UA folks. I have some very, very smart, brilliant people that I have got to have that are looking overseeing the day-to-day, the 2 marketing directors I mentioned, plus my head of performance marketing as well. But that being said, it's obviously such a key part of our marketing, and that it is something that I care about a lot. I think maybe one of the mistakes that people have is to think that like marketing creative is just something that you can sort of do as it's just like, hey, you write some briefs, have someone produce some creative for you, and then test that out and see if it's going to scale or not. I think that, the marketing creative aspect is such a huge piece of the funnel. And it really will make a huge difference to your performance. Of course, as I said, the first major thing that allows you to be able to scale or not scale is how strong your LTV is. But the second piece is like, how performative is your creative? And performative creative comes from really understanding why some things are working, why things are not working, understanding what's happened, the trends in the market, understanding your users quite deeply. And so often you'll see campaign managers or UA managers that are, very, very, very data savvy, very good at operating complex systems. But the creative aspect is something that is a struggle for them. And then vice versa, you often see creative people who really just don't have a clue about UA or how UA performs, and they're just like, give me a brief and I'll produce it for you. And so that separation is something that needs to be glued together, right? Like we need that Venn diagram where the UA managers and campaign managers really understand creative and can have that part of their brain that thinks creatively, and then vice versa. We need the creative people to really kind of understand performance and understand market trends and benchmarking, etc. And then having those come together in as much as a unified process as possible. I think another aspect is there's all two other things that happens on the UA side. Is sometimes you either have a team that is so focused on certain networks that then they struggle to scale, and then other teams you have that are so diversified in their networks that they really struggle to scale any specific network. And so finding a good balance there, again, maybe balance being a key buzzword here, really being able to understand sort of what is, don't spread yourself too thin, but also diversify your wallet, your share of wallet, etc. So,
that's a very good point you made, was about the technical manager, let's say. For me, I run an agency, right? We need to be able to consult about SK ad network. We need to preach conversion values to every new client because they very often come with exactly that problem. They don't understand the technicalities of attribution and stuff. And we basically need to transport that knowledge. This influenced my recruiting very much in a way that I was looking for people who actually understand technical stuff. But then I was running into exactly that problem that you described. The creative thinking was lacking, right? So they were table people, technical people, but they couldn't think of a madman kind of creative approach of marketing a certain a game or a dating app or a meditation app, right? Especially when you go across industries, it gets very difficult for those folks. So how I'm approaching it right now is that I have my technical team, basically like technical campaign managers, but then I'm also looking for creative marketers, which was a new term for me that I've learned. And I'm looking here for people that basically understand the basics of setting up campaigns, but have a very creative thinking, creative approach. And I try to bring those together in one team. And I hope I have to find
absolutely. I think that's really the right strategy. I think at the end of the day, like even the most technical people need to still remind themselves they are marketers, right? It's very easy to just be, in the what you call it, like the air traffic controlling environment, right? Where you're just looking at numbers and you're just looking at campaigns and you're looking at ROAS and media spend, etc. But at the end of the day, like they should still be fundamentally a marketer, and then vice versa, right? The creative people, they need to be as creative as they can, but it's not just just empty creativity. It needs to really be tied to insight to your customers, what motivates them, what drives them, and then also being very aware that numbers talk. Right. And so until you really try things out, and then also networks are very dynamic, right? You can come up with a great idea, but then maybe it's just hard to scale, like, because there's historical data on old hero creatives and like, how do you get a new to scale? And then sometimes you can try to brute force it or whatever, but also something that, creative people need to understand as well. Like, how do the systems actually work?
When we think about product-driven marketing, what should a marketer ask? What type of questions should a marketer ask to a product team? Like, is there something where you say, "Hey, I'm hiring now Admiral Media as an agency, and they are a bunch of marketers, and I would expect that they ask these questions about the product." Or when you hire some UA manager, same way. Would you expect certain questions coming from those folks to understand product better, or to get better in their marketing job? That they have certain knowledge about the product?
Well, first and foremost is they need to use the product, right? They need to use the product as much as possible. If it's a game, they should be playing the game, and and this is for every marketer, like whether a product marketer, whether community manager, influencer marketing, user acquisition, CRM, ASO, et cetera, whatever different, types of functions you have in marketing, all of them should be always playing your game and really understanding your game and playing the competition. That's in games. I think same goes for, ride hailing or whatever. They need to be using the app if they're if they're working for Uber, they should be using Uber a lot, but they should also be using Lyft. They should be taking regular cabs and seeing what that experience is like, etc.
One that's because I actually was working in one company. I don't know which one it was, a long time ago, and I had exactly that approach. Like, okay, we should use the competitors' apps and stuff, and I was told no, it's prohibited. It's prohibited. Use the competitor.
Like that's I'm hopefully they're still doing well, but that seems like a fast way to die as a business.
Was very counterintuitive. Yeah.
That's a bit that's a very strange mindset that the company had. I mean, like at the end of the day, it's like it's not like you're always going to be just understanding the different options out there and the different experiences and is really important. And how does your own experience that you're serving compares to the others? I think it's key that that every marketer really understands the game deeply and understands the competition deeply, the landscape. I think that means that also when they go talk to product teams, they are knowledgeable when they're talking to product people. One of the biggest issues often happens when you try to bring marketers and product people together, especially performance marketers, is you need to speak, especially in a product-led industry, you need to each of those need to be able to talk the other person's language, right? Product people need to understand ROAS and understand campaigns at a high level. They don't need to understand deeply, but they need to understand sort of, this idea that you need to have certain events that you send back to a network and that's going to help, find better users, et cetera. And it takes time and then how auctions work at a very high level workers. So I think people on the development side need to understand sort of user acquisition at a high level or other forms of marketing as well, influencer marketing or whatever. And then the flip side is correct, right? Like marketers need to be able to talk product language. They need to understand how roadmaps work. They need to understand how backlogs work. They need to understand sprints and development times and how certain things impact others. They need to understand the onboarding of an experience or the re-onboarding if they're more focused on retargeting. So all these things are really key that they understand and that they're able to have those conversations at the right level of language. So there's a lot of requirement on any professional to really be curious and open-minded to understand not just their own product and the market, but also how other teams work and operate within the company.
Yeah, that makes sense. Louis, thank you very much. This was very insightful. Thanks for talking so openly. I can imagine in a corporate, it's not always easy to know what you are able to share and what you can talk about. So I really appreciate that you took the time, first of all, and second, that you were sharing so many golden nuggets here. To the audience, if you have questions, please put them in the comments, text us, email us, whatsoever. I guess, Louis, you are very open on LinkedIn. I see you have like 10,000 connections or something. So obviously very reachable and approachable. And yeah, guys, Louis, thank you very much for coming.
No, thank you for the experience. And, it was great to catch up with you. And really looking forward to the next Admiral Media events. And thank you.
Find some. You are invited for sure. Take care, man. Thanks. Bye.
We're here to boost your growth, marketing tips, fun and chats.